Hi everyone, thanks so much for joining us this evening for today's webinar. My name is Jay, I work at London Communications Agency and I'll be chairing today's webinar. Really excited to go through today's scheme by Luxgrove Homes in West Ealing. What we hope to be a really exciting and new vibrant cultural quarter in this side of the Broadway with new retail, potential spaces for an art exhibition, shopping, places to live, places to work, really the whole package here. We have today the project team as well, and I'll ask you guys to introduce yourselves in a second. But before I do, I just wanted to go through the format of today. The first half will be going through a presentation, just providing some detail on the scheme that we have in front of you. And then you'll have an opportunity to ask questions after the presentation as well at the end. So you should be able to see a Q&A function at the bottom of your screen. So if you have any questions around that point, please do feel free to ask the project team. We'll be happy to answer your questions. If I could maybe do a bit of a round table and ask everyone to introduce themselves, starting with Will.
Hi, good evening, everyone. I'm William McKenna, Director at Luxgrove. We are the owners and developers of the site. Look forward to presenting our proposals this evening. I'll hand over to Mark Thompson of Savills.
Hi, good evening. I'm Mark Thompson from Savills, and we're the planning advisors for the project. I'll hand over to Pedro.
Evening, my name is Pedro Collado. I'm from Patel Taylor, the architects behind the new development here. I'll hand over to Nicole.
Hi there, Nicole with Townsend Landscape Architects. So we're the landscape architects on the team doing the public realm as well as some of the terraces on site.
Brilliant. Thanks so much, guys. I see we've got a few people that I know. Hi, Anne. Hi, Rob. Nice to see you as well. And hi, Sebastian. Pedro, would you mind starting sharing the presentation, if that's okay?
Perfect, yeah. Can you just confirm that you can see that? Yep, okay, cool. So I'll just take you through the presentation that we've got tonight. I've got about 20 slides, which would just go through the detail of our proposal. First slide here, just a quick introduction in terms of the design team. Luxgrove Homes are the developer behind the proposal and have a long-term commitment in Ealing, having already to date delivered around 350 homes. Patel Taylor, my company, we're the architects behind the scheme. We bring over about 20 years of experience in designing residential, mixed use, commercial and cultural buildings in London. And we're also working closely with Townsend, who are the landscape architects, who also have an established reputation for delivering high quality public realm landscaping and courtyards buildings in the UK and internationally. In terms of the site and its location, I've marked here the site in red on this plan. It's located towards the western end of Ealing Broadway, and the site includes two buildings plus the public realm between the two buildings. To the north, the site is bounded by the Broadway, here marked in orange, and to the south by Canberra Road. As I'm sure most people know, Broadway has a very high street character. Canberra Road has more of a service street type character. So we have two contrasting building frontages on the site. Moving just to a sort of site aerial photo taken from Google Earth, we can sort of see here the site marked in red, bounded to the north by the High Street, Canberra Road to the south, also the St. James Church to the south, and also that Sainsbury towards the south. Currently, the building is sort of a three-story building with sort of mixed or spaces for retail and offices on the upper floors, although they're slightly underused at the moment. So the site has, I guess would say, has an untapped potential to deliver new and exciting place here for in West Ealing. In terms of its character area and its sort of local planning context, the site is located within the Ealing Broadway Town Centre, marked in this sort of pinkish tone. It also sits within one of the development zones that have been identified by the council, and in particular this one, EAL 16. And one of the core policies of Ealing Broadway refers to the Ealing Metropolitan Town Centre and identifies the need to regenerate the area, providing new homes and retail floor space. So this sort of sets the base for our vision and what we're looking to deliver on the site. Importantly, as a base, a new place with culture, which could host some small art gallery spaces, both internally and in the public realm. Create a new retail spaces on the ground floor that are tailored for small shops, cafes and restaurants. Obviously also provide homes for private sale and low cost rental homes for the residents and the surrounding families. Deliver a new visual marker for the high street. As we enter the high street, we're on sort of the western end of the high street. So having a visual marker with high quality design and sustainability at its core. Obviously also delivering a lively public space which can host a number of events throughout the year, which is safe, which is unique with a range of planting, lighting and seating. And obviously at the base of all of this is delivering high quality homes for Ealing and its residents. In terms of the challenges and opportunities that we've sort of identified, not just within our site, but sort of the wider area in West Ealing, the West Ealing Broadway area, we sort of see the high street regeneration as an important factor and something that needs to be progressed and evolved. And for that, our response is sort of creating a new public space, a new public core here marked in red at the centre of our site. Obviously, our site also can function as a gateway both to the residential towards the south and to the north. Thus, our response is creating potential, or the creation of potential north-south link. As you can sort of see from this plan, our site sits at one of the true north-south links across Broadway. While all the other sort of streets terminate at Broadway, our site plays an important role in connecting both the area to the south to the northern areas and the new developments up there. Obviously, our site also has an obligation to the area. So in terms of that response, we've been looking at how we can activate all three frontages of our site, not just at Broadway, but creating active frontages on the Broadway, on the St. James Avenue, as we turn it into the public space, and also on Canberra Road, and create new active spaces along all three frontages. That also then leads to also us acknowledging the future potential of the adjacent area and the adjacent sites. We have the St. James Church located to the south, and the Sainsbury also. So by creating this sort of new public realm and active frontages, we can potentially have this snowball effect and create a new setting for the St. James Church. In terms of what these ideas could look like in terms of putting them into reality, we're thinking of creating sort of a new pedestrian core in the center of the buildings that's covered by canopy, creating sheltered and shelter spaces that can be used throughout all the year, both on rainy days and sunny days, and thus have a spill out area for new art installations and retail spaces. Also creating a new setting for Canberra Road and obviously the St. James Church setting. The St. James Church area is defined by our building. So if we can positively contribute to Canberra Road, that created sort of a new effect onto the St. James Church. In terms of what this could look like in terms of 3D and what we've been exploring for this new public realm and new ground floor, looking at creating sort of a double height space that's potentially covered in certain areas and having an opaque canopy in other areas to create a mixture of daylight and sunlight that can trickle into the space. And within the space, looking at potential areas for food vendors, market stalls or installation events. In terms of this canopy that we've been exploring, you can sort of see in this diagram, we've been focusing on materials of iron and steel, creating sort of lightweight structure for the elements, having areas that are covered in glass and potentially using skylights to allow more light into it. Obviously a play with nature, which we'll touch on in a minute in terms of the public realm design, and then using light and art to animate the roofscape of the canopy and the ground floor plinth. I'm going to pass over to my colleague Nicole, who will cover some of the landscape elements that we've been exploring on this ground floor design.
Yep. Hi. So when it came to the public realm, we were kind of looking, starting out what we wanted the space to be and what we wanted it to serve. So obviously a big one was making this sort of a center of sociability and encouraging that retail lingering with the active frontages around. But we also wanted it to benefit the community in times where maybe businesses were closed or on weekends or slower business, that the community could come and still use that space to sit, to gather, as well as to play. So we just wanted it to sort of connect to the greater network of public spaces along Broadway. I'll go to the next slide. So then we looked specifically within that square, how could it be used? And of course, it would be the commercial spill out that's on both sides, but it would still function as a pedestrian walkway and thoroughfare through that north-south connection. But then into a bigger vision of it, it could, function as a flexible event space. There's opportunities on the weekend for markets and artists and other events to come in and use that space, as well as if it's not being used for an event, to still continue to have formal seating and greening up that space with planting and just a place to linger. Next slide. So this would just be a render of kind of how that vision is sort of realized. We took two sort of planting islands, as we're calling them, that incorporate both seeding and greening and planting, but that space, keeping it nice and open to have both the connections through, as well as spill out and flexible event space. So you're kind of getting all of those elements in one, and just making it a very vibrant space and along Broadway.
Cool. Thanks, Nicole. I guess I would just add on terms of this CGI, what we're looking to offer here is something that's unique and not replicate what's already offered along the Broad Street, but create a unique setting for this space on St. James Avenue. In terms of getting into sort of the nitty-gritty in terms of the plans and how this would be structured, this is a ground floor plan, and what I'd like to sort of highlight here is just what's been marked in sort of orange and yellow color, which is the retail spaces. And as sort of mentioned at the beginning, the idea is to activate all three sides of the retail, so have limited amount of plants and blank facades, and open up as much of the facades for retail use and art use and commercial uses. We've also allowed for a mezzanine level to have flexibility in terms of retail spaces. So on the mezzanine levels, they can be adjusted to adapt to the evolving market. And then we've also allocated on this mezzanine level cycle stores. We feel that's an important feature to have a sustainable transport solution. So on the mezzanine level, we'd have all the cycle stores for the residential elements. In terms of how this would look on the ground floor, one of the key aspects that we've been looking in terms of a design of the streetscape is to tie the base of the building into existing context, both in terms of the height datums, but also some of the architectural elements. So we can sort of see in this indicative view, looking west to east, the idea of tying the height of the building into the adjacent terraces, and also taking elements of the architectural of the existing terraces into the building, in particular, so the white framing and the bay window structure. In terms of the upper elements, obviously, we are delivering a residential scheme. So in terms of the design of that, we've been focusing on designing from the inside out, or essentially designing the home first and then understanding how that affects the facades. So in terms of some of the design criteria that we've been exploring within those residential homes, the idea of generous glazing, having flexible layouts to adapt to evolving family needs, having a mixture of outdoor space and balconies, having flexible kitchens and adequate bathroom sizes, and obviously following the National Housing Space Standards and storage standards for these residential homes. And some of the images that we've got here are just some of the examples of some of the typical layouts that we've been exploring in the building. One of the key features of the building is that we're aiming to maximize the number of dual aspect homes. So the idea of having homes with multiple windows on different orientations to allow for ventilation, or for allow for cross ventilation, and for allow different daylight techniques to come in. In terms of some of the features of buildings, the dual aspect, having no more than 8 homes per core, having 10% wheelchair and accessible homes, and having step-free access to all the homes by the 2 lift shafts and 2 cores. As we move up the building in response to the townscape and to the terrace, we step the buildings back to create smaller footprints as we move up, and having only 4 homes per core. But this allows us to create a variety of home sizes from larger 3 beds down to 1 beds. We also, by stepping the building back, create sort of a series of terraces, which then allows us to provide different landscape treatments. So we have opportunities for play, opportunities for urban wildlife, biodiversity, and urban greening, using the different terraces and roofs as we move up the building. In terms of then how this building sort of begins to look, we've utilized a simple palette of 4 materials: a red brick, within that using slightly different tones of color and texture and rustication, a white ceramic material, a white masonry, a white masonry material, a ceramic material, a green colored ceramic material, and also using fine metal work. The idea behind sort of the architectural language is to use a series of planes with slightly different manners and slightly different architectural treatments to respond to their different settings. So using a common material palette, but depending on if the building is facing the Broadway or facing St. James Avenue, using slightly different manners in terms of the fenestration and the balcony design, the window placements, to create a coherent design for that setting and for that facade. So in terms of next steps and where we see sort of this the project moving, obviously we've been having over the last couple of days the public exhibition and today the webinar. We're looking to have a planning submission in the first quarter of next year, with an ideal target planning approval in Q3, and then we're anticipating on site in the second quarter of 2024. And then to summarize in terms of what we're trying to deliver here on this project is creating new retail, arts and business spaces on the ground floor to support the local community, circa 140 high quality homes to buy and to rent, new affordable homes for the borough, new public realm with potential opportunities for weekend markets or different types of events, and also having those commercial units or those units on the ground floor to allow for artistic communities to utilize those spaces to celebrate Ealing's artistic community. So that sort of wraps up the quick introduction and presentation of the scheme. I'll pass over to Jay.
Brilliant. Thanks so much, Pedro. That was really, really helpful. I hope that was helpful for you guys too. I'm just going to allow you guys to talk, actually, just because we've got 3 attendees today. So I thought it might be better just to have a little bit more of an easier discussion. So you can talk to us as well if you like, or you can, if you prefer as well, you can use the Q&A function at the bottom too. If I could just open the floor up to any questions at all. Who would like to go first?
Hello.
Hi, is that Sebastian?
Speaking.
Hi, Sebastian. Hi. Do you have a question for the panel?
Just wondering what the proportion of art to commercial will be, sort of art space to retail space.
It's a really excellent question. I wonder who would like to take that. Maybe Pedro will.
Well, I can start and then we'll maybe can finish off. At the moment, we're sort of exploring still the different, in terms of the plan, the different sizes of each of the units. And we're still looking into working out what's the best mix and range. So I don't have an exact answer in terms of the exact breakdown of those spaces.
I mean, is it roughly 50-50 or, 25-75? I mean, can you give us any idea at all?
Hi, Sebastian. William here. As Jay alluded to, it's a good question. It's actually one of the key areas that we are sort of speaking with potential tenants and operators. But in the interim, what we've worked with a local artistic charity called SET, S-E-T.
Yeah.
And it was partly designed to actually test, what would the appetite be of local artists for affordable art space, and that affordable art space ranges from essentially free space up to heavily discounted space. and the feedback has actually been very positive. So we're now working through further consultations with SET as a group to really try and understand, would it work to give them, there's quite a prominent corner to the rear which faces onto St. James's Church. So it faces into St. James's Avenue, also the church, and potentially sort of the wider street scene, to give them a space which would be both functional, so I potentially have artists actually in there working, but also a public space where you've got an element of exhibition going on. Right. And then the whole concept that's been discussed with this link element between the two buildings is that actually, rather than this just being a sort of a stale passageway between two buildings, that becomes it's an element of outdoor and indoor because it's covered, but it's the ideas we have are sort of rotating exhibition space. So there's a few areas that have done this very well now, where you have an outdoor exhibition which rotates. It could be sculptural space, but we don't have a specific answer, which is why you'll see on the plans and indeed on the final submission that I think one of the key things on the commercial is to keep the space flexible. So it's been designed so that you could have, I think, a minimum of 5 units, or quite possibly a number of smaller units if that flows best. But the councils are keen, as we are, ultimately to make sure that what we don't have is a whole bunch of vacant units.
Of course.
Equally, what we're trying to do is tie an element of sort of cultural experience to the building, so it's not just your, if you want to call it, sort of stale development with unplanned commercials, probably the best way of putting it.
Sure.
But there'll be a decent there will be a decent proportion of space, and I think a crucial area to think of is as I said, that public area between the buildings, and then the sort of spill potential between there and the area that currently sits between the Sainsbury's car park and the church. There's conversations going on within the sort of S106 agreements that our vision is that area would serve as a much larger exhibition space, whether that's as I said, sort of sculptural or rotating or occasional use as markets, but it's we're seeking to maximize the area that's viable, basically.
Okay, that makes sense. I mean, having retail on the high street and then the art spaces sort of to the rear. Okay, thank you.
Pleasure.
Bro, thanks, Sebastian. Anne, I think you've unmuted yourself, so I'm not sure if you've got a question at all.
I have, thank you. I have got so many questions, as always. It's partly what you don't say rather than what you do say. But could I first follow up on the point that Sebastian made? I'm not involved with, and I don't know a lot about the set artist thing, but I thought the whole point was that they have taken over the space currently to provide low-cost space for artists. It sounds as if they're going to have that for a few more months, and then basically there's going to be no commitment to support them going forward, which I think is really disappointing. So that's just more an observation. The second thing is about the other businesses in the area, and I'm particularly thinking of the Rise charity. What discussions have you had with them, and what are their plans? That then leads me on to the nature of the area, and I'm sure people coming along to the exhibitions have raised this. One of the reasons why St. James Avenue had its planters and its seats taken out was because they attracted street drinkers, drug takers, and rough sleepers. Now, how are you going to stop that just happening again? Because that's the nature of the area. And West Ealing is not some attractive central London area. All your pictures are not West Ealing. Now, I would love an answer to this, to say, well, the whole area is going to change, but I don't think that's realistic. So I wonder how you're going to work with that. And then the southern half of St James. I'm not clear whether you plan to pedestrianise that, because I can't see how you can, because it's the access to the Sainsbury's car park. So I'd just like some clarity on that. And then the height. You don't say how tall, and I haven't counted the number of stories in the picture, but I'm looking, I think you're talking 13 or 14 above a triple height ground floor. So can you confirm that as well? I think that's all for the moment. Thank you.
No, it's fine. That's absolutely great. Why don't we take these in batches? I think the last two questions are probably more design related. So in terms of the height and also the pedestrianisation of that part of St James that you've alluded to. So maybe Pedro, do you mind just taking those two? Then we can touch on the other three.
So just in terms of, I'll touch on the Sainsbury access. We're not proposing changes to the Sainsbury access. Our site, if I go back just to a quick plan, our red line just includes the pedestrian space of St James in the middle. So we will be maintaining the access to Sainsbury as it is. Our detailed proposals will be only within the red line, so there'll be no changes within that. Clarify?
Okay, thank you.
In terms of, I think the second question was about the heights. We're proposing in terms of the ground floor, it's a double height space for the ground floor, so 2 stories. And then if I just scroll back to an image. So we're proposing shoulder heights of where the building is at its maximum of 7 to 8 above that. And then the tallest element, 11 and 13 above the ground floor. So that's when the building steps into its smaller shape for the 2 top elements.
Okay, thank you.
Chair, I'm happy to address the other questions, which I think I've written down correctly. So just addressing them in order. So set to clarify, when we took over the buildings were partially tenanted. There is still a couple tenants, of which Rise is one of them. Very much rather, we could have looked at this as the typical put guardians in or block it up and put storage in and get rid of business rates in full. What we've looked to do, we are involved in the borough through a number of activities, both development and charitable. We've looked to try and partner with SET to provide space. The space will have been provided for over 2 years, to clarify, rather than a matter of months. And the logic is, it would be impossible for anyone to sit in my position here and make a promise that there is 100% an agreement that SET goes back into the building. That you couldn't do that within a Section 106 agreement. What there is a commitment from us. As I said, we're working with SET as partners, reviewing the demand through what we've currently done and what we're continuing. You may have noticed in the last month, there's now an open exhibition space, which we're testing. So we're testing options with the view being that they will be involved in the building. I appreciate that there may be an element of distrust, if you want to say it in relation to that, but I can say to you, genuinely as a developer, we're of the view that it would work well both for the area, from a commercial perspective, from a wider interest perspective, and ultimately coming on to your third point there, there is an issue of unsavory incidents, let's say, that happen in the area. I'm aware that there was the issues previously of rough sleeping and stuff. That's partly linked to the fact that Rise are there, ultimately the activities and services that they're offering. They are on a lease which expires, and I'm not aware of their future plans, but I think they'll be locating somewhere else within the borough. But the interest here is to try and bring about improvements. It's not, I completely agree with you, it's not going to happen in 24 hours. But I think there's a fair amount of investment now going into this section of the borough. What we're looking to do here is not abandon the high street. We could very easily have looked at the ground floor and just said, get rid of the quality commercial space, which a number of the other schemes have done, reduce it. But what we've done is much more costly in commercial terms, and And actually through the public events we've done, it's the general area. Everyone does say, essentially, are you sure you want to have that much commercial? The attitude from our perspective is, yes, we are looking at this building as being a building that will hopefully transform this pocket. And I'm not naive to think we're going to change the whole of West Ealing, but I'd like to think that this does become a focal point from a retail perspective. And to me, good retail works when you've got something other than just a supermarket. If it's something artistic that helps to anchor it, then I think that should be seen as something positive, both for us and the wider community there.
Thanks, Will. And did that answer your questions?
Yes, I think it does, and I appreciate that some of this is still to be determined. Yeah, that's fine. Thank you.
Bro. Does anyone else have any other questions at all?
Yes, Robert Goad here. Can I just clarify a point about the height, please?
In terms,
yeah, sure. What exact clarifications do you need, Robert? Is it the actual number of stories?
Yes. You talk in terms of a double height ground floor. And then, if I remember correctly, it was something like 13 stories above that.
correct.
I presume there's a plant room also above that. So my question is really twofold. First of all, is it effectively 15 stories plus plant? And if that is the case, how does that compare with the tall buildings in the vicinity? It must be pretty well at the limit, if not above the limit of the other tall buildings in the vicinity. That's my first question. And my second question really relates to the answer you gave, Anne. These are very noble aspirations you have for the area, but I think one has to be realistic about the nature of West Ealing and its future likely character. I think what would be most unfortunate is you have these grand aspirations for a vibrant retail area, but you end up providing a large number of empty units, which is, well, counterproductive to say the very least. What makes you so confident that you believe that this can actually attract, this scheme can attract this degree of retail interest? Thank you.
No, thanks, Robert, for that. Why don't we take these in batches again? So I think you had two questions on design, clarification on the heights, and how it compares to other nearby developments. So Pedro, I don't know if you'd like to take that one.
So yeah, your interpretation of the height is correct. Our plant is set back from the roofscape, so it's doesn't follow the same form. So it is set back, the plant structure. In terms of comparing to other schemes, we went extensively through this process with the council to understand, and we are below the taller elements in the adjacent Broadway developments. So I think those ones are, I think 15, 16 the taller. So we are similar, but just on that one taller element here. We then drop down to a shoulder height of 7 stories, so from matching the adjacent context that's emerging along the Broadway for the lower elements of the building.
Well, thanks, Pedro. And I think
just on the, sorry.
Oh, sorry. Well, no, go ahead.
I was just going to say, in relation to the commercial, it's the perspective that we're taking here is that this is a section of the borough that is evolving fairly quickly. There's quite a lot of predominantly residential development that's completed in the last 24 months, and a decent pipeline of already consented schemes that are underway. So if you want to break this down and look at it in numbers terms, there's over 1,000 new homes that are definitely going to be occupied by the time that our development is finished. So these homes do need to be ultimately serviced from somewhere. And I think if you just take a snapshot of the high street in the last 6 months, there's 3 or 4 new retail outlets that are now open. Now, granted, we need to see, will they survive? Hopefully they will, but they are, the things, there's a new local butcher, there's new services that are now being opened as you see the potential demand opening. So our approach to that has been, develop the best retail you can do. As I said, it's quality space, it's got spill out areas. So if it is a cafe or a butcher or gallery space, you've got areas to then sit outside. So actually people would use the area rather than pass by the area. The real simple answer is that there is no guarantee to it, but we're confident of the ability of attracting occupants to the building, and that flexibility is the center of the piece. We've designed these units to be fully flexible. There's no units which are going to get compromised from the outset.
Well, just I thought I would just add to the end of that to say, from a planning perspective, when the government amended the use classes order, one of those reasons was to have effectively what's known as Class E, which is what we would apply for here, which offers a wide range of uses. And one of the reasons for that is that it means that you minimize the chance of sort of vacant units, you maximize flexibility and vibrancy and vitality in your high streets. So whether that's sort of a typical supermarket or retail shop, a butcher, grocer, to a GP surgery or dentists, there's quite a wide range of uses that can occupy Class E space. So obviously I think the intention here would be to have the flexibility, but try to get those units occupied by designing attractive spaces, having good quality spaces, flexibility of different sizes, and also just future-proofing them. So if they do need to change use in the future, you're not having to undertake significant work. It's able to be done relatively cost effectively, so that you can attract and not sort of deter any interest from any different uses that might want to take those spaces.
Brilliant. Thanks guys for that. Any further questions at all from Anne, Robin, and Sebastian?
None from me at the moment, thank you.
Thank you for your answer. That's helpful. Thank you very much. None further from me. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thanks, guys. Well, if we haven't got any further questions, we can wrap up early. So thanks so much for coming along and attending. Obviously, this is not the end of our consultation program, as you probably are aware. We'll look to submit an application early next year. But if there are any questions that you have, please do feel free to get in contact with us using the contact details below. I know you also probably have some of our personal email addresses too, so please do feel free to drop us a line, and we will have more than happy to answer any sort of further questions that you may have. Does that sound okay?
Yeah.
Could I just check, are these slides on the website?
They're not as of yet. We've got the boards on there, Anne, but we'll certainly put the webinar presentation slides on the website.
Okay, thank you.
No problem.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Fantastic. Well, thanks so much for taking your time out of the evening to talk to us, and hopefully we'll see you soon.
Thank you very much, and
Thanks.
goodbye.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Have a good evening.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.